There are moments in life when we search for meaning in places that seem impossibly distant. We chase after answers in foreign cities, in the lives of strangers, in books written by people we will never meet. We convince ourselves that somewhere out there, beyond the horizon of our everyday existence, lies the truth we've been seeking. But what if the search itself is the point? What if the meaning we're looking for isn't waiting to be found, but emerges in the act of searching? This is the haunting territory explored by Roberto Bolaño in his final and most ambitious novel, 2666. Written in the last years of his life, as illness closed in around him, Bolaño created a work that spans continents and decades, weaving together the lives of critics, journalists, writers, and victims into a tapestry of human longing and violence. It's a book that refuses easy answers, that asks us to sit with discomfort, and that ultimately suggests that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Imagine four European literary critics who have devoted their lives to studying the work of an obscure German writer named Benno von Archimboldi. They've read every word he's written, analyzed every sentence, built their careers on his mysterious novels. Yet they've never met him. No one has. He's a phantom, a ghost who exists only through his words. These critics travel the world attending conferences, debating interpretations, falling in and out of love with each other, all while searching for any trace of the man himself. Their obsession becomes their identity. Without it, who would they be? Then they hear a rumor. Archimboldi might be living in Santa Teresa, a fictional Mexican border city. So they go there, driven by that same need that drives all of us when we believe we're close to something important. They arrive expecting revelation. Instead, they find a city consumed by horror, a place where women are disappearing and dying with terrifying regularity, and no one seems capable of stopping it. This is where Bolaño does something unexpected. He shifts our attention away from the search for the famous writer and toward the women whose bodies are being found in the desert. He forces us to look at what we'd rather turn away from. In doing so, he asks a question that echoes through every page of the book. Why do we pay attention to some stories and ignore others? Why does the mystery of a reclusive author captivate us, while the murders of countless women become mere statistics? The book moves through different perspectives, different time periods, different kinds of stories. We meet an American journalist who comes to Santa Teresa to write about boxing, but becomes haunted by the murders. We follow a philosophy professor in Mexico whose life unravels in ways that mirror the chaos around him. And eventually, we journey back in time to learn the story of Archimboldi himself, discovering that he too has been marked by violence, by war, by the senseless cruelty that seems woven into human history. What makes this book so powerful is not just what it says, but what it refuses to say. Bolaño doesn't offer us the comfort of resolution. The murders continue. The mysteries remain unsolved. The characters we've come to care about drift apart or fade from view. This might sound frustrating, even nihilistic, but there's something else happening here, something deeper. Bolaño is showing us that life doesn't organize itself into neat narratives with clear beginnings and endings. Real tragedy doesn't come with explanation or closure. Real evil often goes unpunished. Real questions go unanswered. And yet, we keep searching. We keep trying to understand. We keep creating meaning even when the universe seems indifferent to our efforts. Think about your own life for a moment. How many of your questions have been definitively answered? How many of your searches have led exactly where you expected? Most of our lives are spent in a state of partial understanding, moving forward with incomplete information, making sense of things as best we can. We're all, in our own way, like those critics searching for Archimboldi. We're chasing something we believe will make everything clear, only to discover that clarity itself might be an illusion. The city of Santa Teresa, inspired by the real border city of Ciudad Juarez, becomes more than just a setting in this book. It becomes a symbol of a particular kind of modern horror. The violence against women there is systematic yet chaotic, brutal yet banal. Bodies are found and catalogued. Police investigate or pretend to. Life continues. The city keeps growing. Factories keep operating. People keep going to work and falling in love and raising children, all while this horror unfolds in the margins. This is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the book, the way it shows us that atrocity can coexist with ordinary life. We don't have to look far to recognize this pattern in our own world. We scroll through news of distant suffering while drinking our morning coffee. We read about injustice and then check our social media feeds. We know terrible things are happening, but we also have to live our lives. Bolaño doesn't judge this. He simply shows it to us, holds up a mirror to the way we've learned to compartmentalize horror. But there's something else woven through this darkness. There's literature. There's art. There's the stubborn human impulse to create meaning through words. Archimboldi himself is a writer who emerged from the devastation of World War II, who saw unspeakable things and somehow transformed them into novels. The critics who search for him have built their lives around his words, found purpose in interpretation and analysis. Even the murdered women in Bolaño's telling have their own stories, their own dreams and loves and losses. This is where the book becomes almost spiritual in its reach. It suggests that even in the face of meaningless violence, even when justice seems impossible and understanding remains out of reach, the act of bearing witness matters. The act of trying to understand matters. The act of creating or engaging with art matters, not because it changes anything directly, but because it affirms our humanity. It says that we refuse to accept horror as normal. We refuse to let the dead become mere numbers. The structure of the book itself reflects this philosophy. It's massive, sprawling, sometimes difficult. It asks patience from its readers. It doesn't guide you by the hand or promise satisfaction. In this way, reading it becomes its own kind of search, its own act of devotion. You have to trust that the journey means something, even if you can't always see where it's leading. Many readers find themselves haunted by this book long after finishing it. They think about the women of Santa Teresa. They wonder about Archimboldi's fate. They reflect on the way violence and beauty exist side by side in the world. The book doesn't provide answers, but it changes the way we ask questions. It makes us more attentive to the stories we ignore, more suspicious of easy narratives, more willing to sit with ambiguity. There's a profound loneliness that runs through these pages. Characters search for connection but often find only glancing contact with other lives. Love affairs begin and end. Friendships form and dissolve. People die without anyone understanding what their lives meant. And yet somehow the search continues. The writing continues. The attempt to make sense of things continues. This persistence in the face of futility is perhaps the most human thing about us. We know we're mortal. We know most of our questions won't be answered. We know the universe is vast and indifferent, but we keep trying anyway. We keep loving, creating, searching, hopping. We keep building meaning even when everything suggests meaning is just something we invent to comfort ourselves. Maybe that's okay. Maybe the meaning we create is no less real for being created. Maybe the search for truth is itself a kind of truth. Maybe bearing witness to suffering, even when we can't prevent it, is better than looking away. These are the possibilities the book opens up, the questions it invites us to sit with. Bolaño died before he could fully complete this manuscript. He left behind instructions for how it should be published, what should be included, how it should be divided. Even his death became part of the book's story, another example of how endings come before we're ready, how things remain forever unfinished. There's something fitting about that. A book about incompleteness, about searches that don't end in finding, written by a man who ran out of time. But what he left behind is extraordinary. It's a book that respects its readers enough to trust them with difficulty and darkness. It doesn't pretend the world is simpler than it is. It doesn't offer false hope or easy redemption. Instead, it offers something more valuable, honesty. It says, yes, the world contains horrors. Yes, many things make no sense. Yes, we're often powerless. And still we search. And still we try to understand. And still we create beauty. If you've ever felt lost in your own search for meaning, If you've ever wondered why terrible things happen to good people, if you've ever struggled with the gap between the world as it is and the world as it should be, this book has something to say to you. Not answers, perhaps, but companionship. A recognition that others have walked this difficult ground before you. A reminder that the questions themselves have value. We live in a time when we're encouraged to optimize everything, to find life hacks and shortcuts, to pursue happiness and success with single-minded efficiency. But some of the most important parts of being human can't be optimized. Grief can't be rushed. Love can't be calculated. Meaning can't be purchased or downloaded. Some searches take a lifetime and even then might not reach their destination. That doesn't make them worthless. It makes them human. So perhaps the lesson of 2666, if we can call it a lesson, is this. Don't be afraid of the search that doesn't end in finding. Don't turn away from questions just because they're uncomfortable or answers aren't guaranteed. Don't expect life to make sense in the way stories do. Instead, stay curious. Stay compassionate. Keep paying attention, especially to the stories that others want to ignore. Keep creating, keep loving, keep trying to understand, even when understanding seems impossible. The number in the title, 2666, might refer to many things. Some see it as a date far in the future. Others find numerological or biblical significance. Bolaño himself never explained it definitively. Maybe that's appropriate. Maybe the number is just there to remind us that some things remain mysterious, that not everything needs to be decoded or explained. What we can say is this. The book is an act of enormous ambition and equally enormous compassion. It takes suffering seriously. It treats victims as individuals, not symbols. It respects the complexity of human motivation and the persistence of evil. And it suggests, quietly but firmly, that literature itself is a way of fighting back against the forces that would reduce us to objects or statistics. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing to Classic Books Explained for more timeless ideas. And perhaps more importantly, consider what you're searching for in your own life. Not to find it necessarily, but to honor the search itself, to let it shape you, to let it open your eyes to things you might otherwise have missed. In the end, that might be the greatest meaning of all.